Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Tar Talks. And today, you're back with us, your favorite segment, the flight crew. And you might recognize me, your captain. But here, we have your co-pilot, Aryan Patel, with me to co-host this episode. And we're talking about our trip to WIMUN this year. So, the GSI students took a trip to Singapore to attend the WIMUN conference, and it was sick. Arjun, you want to elaborate on that?
Okay, so this trip was one of the coolest, most weirdest, and let's say the most exhausting things I've ever done, but it was totally worth it. So, what WIMUN is, WFUNA, it's the International Model United Nations, and this was the first one taken place at Singapore. And trust me, this is not the regular MUNs you'll have in your school. This is the closest you'll ever get to a Model United Nations. It has a theme of consensus, where all delegates are required to have similar thoughts. Okay, so now I'll let the floor to Akshaj just to give a brief.
So Aryan is completely correct. WIMUN is organized by WFUNA. It's basically the World Federation of UN associations, so it's a really official one, and they make it as accurate as physically possible. And I was just so excited to go because it's an international event. And again, about the consensus-based approach, it was amazing. I wouldn't say we were required to have the same opinion, but they ditched the voting methods and they made it so that everyone should agree with the proposal being made, with the resolution. And if you don't agree, you voice that out and you make sure everyone's happy at the end of the day. That was amazing.
Okay, so we had a long travel. Many people from our school. I think we had around how many people? Let's say 20, 15, 20 people.
Yeah.
And I think all of us, because we were from different parts of India, the world. He's from the US. So he had reached early. We came a bit late. And the travel was a bit exhausting. And I think we reached Singapore together in a time of 1.5 days, maybe 2 days. So let's start with the simulations. So we had our first simulation on day 2. On day 1, we had the opening ceremony, which was really fun. We got to meet all our chairs, our co-chairs, the Secretary General, and we got to meet all the speakers. We had a lot of diverse people from different parts of the world. We had people from Pakistan, we had people from Bangladesh, we had people from Singapore itself.
Yeah, there were people from China.
Yeah, and Korea, South Korea.
And
so
they were like people from Russia. There were Russians there. There was a guy from Congo. I met him. He was really nice. And everyone was so great. Like, these are all different people from different parts of the world, and we are completely polarized and politically, right? Our countries are not always on the same page. But then when we meet at a conference like WIMUN, we find out that we're all just kids. You know, the Chinese, the kids from China are watching the same memes as us. Like, it was really comforting to find something in common with everyone, and then to learn about all of their differences. That was for me one of my favorite parts of the entire conference in and of itself. Aside from the debates and the conversations we had in the conference sessions, outside at the social events, at the opening ceremony, that was amazing. That was just wonderful.
And the time for the preparation we took for this was like it was really, I would not say hard, but it took a lot of effort to make our position papers, get all our info. Because I'll be honest, I didn't know about this consensus-based approach before I reached there. So I thought it was all about debating against each other, attacking those countries. Because me personally, there were 4 committees. I was in GA6. And the agenda for GA6 was measures to eliminate international terrorism. So, and I got the country Kazakhstan. So I was like really, really scared. And I thought many people were gonna target me. So all I did, ChatGPT, how do I escape? How can I save myself? But then when I reached there, it was the first simulation. I heard consensus and I was like, back of the place. I was so I was so happy. I didn't have to debate that much, but then it was a really fun experience. So I'll hand it over to Akshaj just to explain how the simulations were.
So hold on, let me pedal back on the position paper part. When I found, like, obviously I knew I had to make a position paper. I was like, okay, easy, right? I found out, because we got our committees beforehand when we were making the position paper. So I found out I was in the ILO committee, which is basically the International Labor Organization Committee. I was like, okay, cool. What's my country? El Salvador. Now, I went to making the position paper, and I found out, because they gave us this entire handbook, right? We had to follow these guidelines. They gave us like a rubric, and it had a bunch of instructions. Oh, this is the point. This is that. You have to put this there. And I found out at that moment, the ILO, specifically that position paper for that committee, you had to make a position paper in an entirely different format.
Yeah.
Because the interesting thing about the ILO is it's a tripartite committee. So you have three perspectives: the government, the employers, and the employees. So I was the employer delegate of El Salvador, right? So when I did my position paper was not only as El Salvador, but as an employer from El
Yeah.
Salvador. As an employer, so I had to state my responsibilities. I had to state my concerns. I had to state what I've done in the past. And I had to state all of this stuff, all from the narrowed down perspective of an employer. And that was something that was new for me. And I genuinely feel like I learned a lot from that. And yeah. And it extended even to the committee sessions. When we got there, it was just like like I said, it's a tripartite system. So the employers were on the right, and the employees were on the left, and then the government is sat right in the middle. And then when you're in that session, what you'll also notice is that 50% of the committee is the government, and then 25% is the employers, and 25% is the employees. So what will end up happening is, if a consensus-based approach were to fail, right? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but if these three parties and stakeholders cannot agree on a certain resolution, then it goes to a voting procedure. And in that case, you would need both the employers and the employees to agree on a situation to overthrow the government. And then you would need the government in another party to overthrow an employer or an employee bloc. So that was definitely something that was completely new. I'd never heard about it. I've definitely never experienced it.
So he gave the bit for ILO. Now let's talk about a bit like what I experienced in my committee. My committee was GA6, which stands for the 6th Committee of the General Assembly. So as my agenda was measures to eliminate international terrorism, getting consensus was almost impossible. But then somehow we managed, and getting consensus does not mean sticking to one person's thoughts. It's about merging everyone's thoughts together into something common. So that was an approach I really liked. And let's say there were two other committees except ILO and my committee. We had the WHA, the World Health Assembly. The agenda for that was mental health and youth, and the other committee was UNEA, and their agenda was marine plastic litter and microplastics. So I wish that I was in all committees at the same time, because I really think that would have been more interesting to get on consensus and everything. But then, yeah, I was in my committee, and I think UNEA might have a lot of, maybe let's say, passionate debates and maybe some eco-friendly memes, because some humor is required in such a serious topic. And I think WHA, I think I would have agreed that those debates would have gotten a bit heated. And especially we had delegates from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. Continue.
I just want to elaborate on that. With GSMUN, right, Good Shepherd MUN, when we had it last year, unfortunately we don't have it this year, but everyone was representing different countries. The thing is that when everyone is representing different countries, in reality, we can't fully put ourselves in that country's shoes, or we can't fully open up to international perspectives because we're still from the same nation. The thing about WIMUN is everyone there was literally from different nations.
Yeah.
And you know what? Everyone that was from a different nation was representing a nation other than their own.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there was a single Chinese person that was representing China. China was probably represented by a Russian. Isn't that ironic? And I want to hold on to one of the thoughts that Aryan mentioned. In the committee sessions, in the GSA, actually in every committee, it wasn't about recognizing and holding on to one guy's perspective. It was about merging everyone's perspectives into one that can fit everyone, right? And you know what that reminds me of, Aryan?
Yeah.
The Vienna Formula.
Oh, I totally forgot about that. So we had them in our simulations, and this was a different way of, let's say, getting a resolution. So in normal school computer lab MUNs, we would have voting procedures to agree on each statement or each clause. But this, so in Vienna Formula, you get divided into your regional groups. So in our thing, we had 4 regional groups, and each of them have to come up with 20 clauses, 8 operative, and I think there were 12 preamp. No, 8 preamps and 12 operative. So each regional group has to make 20 clauses and submit them to the chair. Then from each regional group, there'll be like, let's say, a huge table where there'll be 4 head delegates.
Yeah.
Head delegates represent, there'll be each head delegate from one regional group that represent their regional group. And they merge, delete, or add paragraphs into the final reso, which is the 80 paragraphs. So I'll let Akshaj continue it.
Okay, so the Vienna Formula, putting the Vienna Formula into practice was my favorite part of the entire conference. All 4 or 5 days is my favorite part. So what we did, right, is, remember how I stated that to you that we had 3 blocks? Okay, so each block would just make their own conclusion.
Yep.
Okay, each block would make their own conclusion that is fitted to their needs and their requirements. So the employers would be more towards the employers, the employees would be more towards the employees, and so on, right? And so once you have these three conclusion papers, right, you merge them all. The chair will merge them all into one document, one mega document that must have been like 20 pages long. Okay. And then from there, you'll have a spokesperson, a representative from each block. So the employers and the employees, they each had a vice chair, okay? A vice chair. And then there was a spokesperson for the government, okay? And then what's also interesting is within the government, when there was spokespersons for regional groups. These regional groups, they're like international, the South American group, I forgot what it's called, but the South American countries would have a group for that, and then there would be a spokesperson from that group, and then the same would apply for multiple different regions. So what would happen is they would all sit down at one table, and there would be facilitators from each block who would basically communicate the block's views to the person that's sitting in the seat.
Yep.
And this was quite literally the hot seat. Once you sat down at that table, it was just war through dialogue. That we're not repeating what is already said in the other paragraphs, because like I said, it's 3 conclusion papers stacked into one. So a lot of the paragraphs were repeating. So they cut it because it was redundant.
Yep.
I tried my absolute best to make sure that didn't happen in my block, because we had less content. Everyone else came with this bulk, this mega, like, this gargantuan amount of AI grok generated, ChatGPT, anything generated thing. We hand wrote everything, so we must have had a total of like 10 paragraphs out of the 40. And in the end, I made sure that the only thing that was cut was 3 sentences that were truly repeating. So you had to fight for yourself, for your views, for the views of your block, and you had to forget, as a vice chair, you had to forget about your own country. You were representing your block, all of the employers of the world, theoretically. Think about the amount of influence that would have. Think about the value of every word you speak. That's what makes, in my opinion, that's why I think everyone should try WIMUN or MUN, because the amount of, like, the reality of it, the fact that this stuff is done in real life and you could take a part right now is just ludicrous to me, and I feel like everyone should try it.
So just to conclude for the Vienna Formula, I would like to say that after all the head delegates completed, let's say, editing their paragraphs, they had all delegates went back to their places, and we had a line-by-line review, which is basically amendments to all the clauses, but then line by line. And there were so many debates for just one word. Like maybe increasingly, they wanted to change it just to like tiny let's say, tiny changes. But then finally we got to consensus. And after seeing this real UN in action, I think it's not only just debating and voting, it's building a solution with all the countries on board, with everyone from the whole world on
Yeah.
board. And our perspective from, like, hearing other people's perspectives, our perspectives changed a lot.
Yeah.
And we had to change our own statements. We had to withdraw our statements. And there was like 80% of all of this was just consensus. So I think this consensus based approach was way more effective. And yeah, it might be slower, but then it's really satisfying to know that the whole committee is with you on this. Yeah. So you're not just stuck with the people you have from this school. You're there with the whole world. And then that's the best part of it.
So again, for all the viewers might now that might feel bored, right? If you're watching this and you feel bored right now, you're like, why is this guy? Why are these two random ninth graders talking to me and telling me about how great WIMUN is? Okay, I want you to consider this. Okay, you're sitting in a chair, right? You're sitting with a circle of people. Okay, you look to your right. There's a guy from Russia. You look to your left, there's a guy from Pakistan. Then there's someone from Congo, someone from China, someone from South Korea. Think about the amount. Think about how much you'll learn. Think about how much you would just learn from one. Just spend 15 minutes with them, and I promise that no 5 classes in a classroom would be as valuable as that. You will truly find out things about A, yourself, and B, the world. The world. You're sitting with people that have seen different parts of the world. It's just like, it'll change the way you think. It'll change the way you think permanently.
You will meet insane to cool people, and you will never forget this. This will be a memory for the rest of your life. And you can tell your friends, I've debated with a Pakistani, I've debated with a person from China, I've debated with this guy, and I've got to consensus with them, even though we're from different countries. I've listened to their thoughts, and I've been on their path, and I understand what they mean, and I've reached consensus with them. So I would say that's a really good thing. And if you're looking forward for a MUN, please don't go to your next school MUN. Go for WIMUN, or go for any other MUN that's the closest to UN MUNs. And I know that the consensus negotiation is harder than the ones before, but I can promise you that you will learn 10 times more than what you learn in your school MUNs. So yeah.
It's definitely one of the most thought-provoking experiences that you can have, and I strongly recommend you try it. And with that being said, I would now like to bring this episode to a close. Now, we learned a lot. We learned that Aryan loves walking around like, I've talked with a Pakistani, and I made a lot of decisions with him that'll change the course of this world permanently and indefinitely. But on a more serious note, we had a lot of... Actually, this isn't a more serious note. We had a lot of fun in Singapore, guys. Come on, we went to Singapore. I mean, the hotel we stayed in... Hotel Michael.
Hotel Michael, yeah. The swimming pool, there was a gym, there was the best food I've ever had, the hotel room, everything about it was just too good.
Even if you don't go to WIMUN, just go to that hotel, dude. That breakfast buffet.
That was awesome.
Like, I literally, I was sitting there, right, with all these are the same people. It's just a completely different environment, from like K2 to 5-star hotel buffet. It was amazing, and it was just, everything was so worthwhile. So if you don't want to go to WIMUN still, you don't deserve to go. Yep. If I haven't convinced you yet, you shouldn't go.
Okay, so I would like to say one final thing. If you're ready to take on to the world, one paragraph at a time, go to WIMUN.
Yeah. Okay. So this was an amazing episode. I enjoyed myself, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. We're on Spotify, so you can check the comments down below. You can type up whatever you felt, whatever you would want us to explore next. I hope that you guys loved this episode, and we sure loved making it.
Yep.
So with that being said, we'll see you later. This flight is landing. So fasten your seatbelts and just X out the tab that you're on.